You won't believe the moment that finally broke Christine's heart. And it wasn't infidelity. It was something more low-key, yet much more hurtful. When a close friend made a personal attack on her marriage, Cody joked it off and stood Christy alone. What emerged afterwards laid bare a profound emotional gap that had been developing over years. Ready to watch the moment everything changed? Watch now. You know, it's difficult to watch some of those original clips. They're just disturbing, particularly if you begin to actually understand what is really happening behind the scenes. Take Robyn, for instance. There's this residual notion that she somehow rescued the family. But to be honest, it seems like she ensured that she was the surviving one. And now there are rumors about her health, but here's the thing. If she was grappling with something serious, don't you think we'd know all about it? According to her track record, Robyn has never been afraid to shed light on even small problems, particularly if it can help make sense of why she's stepping back from something. She's the kind to say, well, if it weren't for that, I would have gone. But what she did during COVID spoke louder than words ever could. Breathtaking caution, complete withdrawal, and record-high anxiety. So if there really was something big going on now, it probably wouldn't be a hushed-up, secret affair. What seems more believable, painfully so, is that we're looking at good old-fashioned laziness. She barely enforces rules with her kids. Polygamy's complexities aside, there's a basic parenting principle here. At some point, the kids need to sleep in their own beds. But with Robyn, they stay in her bed, not because they have to, but because it's just easier than setting boundaries and sticking to them. And when it comes to the little day-to-day things, like waking the kids or putting them to sleep, it's often Cody who's doing the heavy lifting. You'll hear him say, "She didn't get any sleep. She's resting now," while Robyn's nowhere to be found. She's known to sleep in until 10 or 11 in the morning, contributing little to group efforts, especially during family events. Camping trips? You'll find her sitting while everyone else is wrangling kids and tidying up. And unfortunately, it's beginning to show. Her unsteady, slow-moving gait betrays years of physical idleness. No indication that she ever maintained a consistent exercise regimen or ever placed any genuine emphasis on remaining healthy. The classic pattern. Folks who never learned how to stand up for themselves fall into easy dependency and remain there. The difference in this instance, she managed to find someone who was willing to pay for the entire way of life. Cody, on the other hand, has also transformed. Now no longer charming and introspective, he focuses most of his energy on raising Robyn's children, perhaps to compensate for the distance he has drawn with his other children. And in Robyn's own eyes, it is as if she believes her work is finished. She provided him with those children, and that is it. Let's not forget Sister Wives Closet, Robyn's lone attempt at an entrepreneurial venture, and all the big hype for nothing. It didn't go anywhere before it ever even started. She doesn't get much started, and when she does, she seldom sees it through. Remember any family moment that pops into your mind? Dirt biking, vacations, even games in the backyard. And she's on the sidelines or nowhere to be found. And then there is that rumor about the doll collection, that she spent tens of thousands of dollars on it. Now, if she just would have come clean and spoken about it, told the story, said it was an offbeat hobby, or joked about treating herself to some retail therapy, it could have been a candid, connectable moment, something authentic. But no, instead she dismisses it or changes the subject. When Robyn's actions come into question, she tends to slip back into that old habit, playing the victim. Initially, she appeared keen to get along with the larger family, to contribute and be a part of things. However, once she had security, that enthusiasm didn't last long. Rather than putting effort into the family, she appeared to turn energy toward achieving more. More stuff, more attention, more assistance, without contributing much of anything in return. She and Cody seem to both be stuck in this cycle. It's consumerism and emotional withdrawal. They feed off of each other's withdrawal from the rest of the family and tell themselves it's reasonable. Robyn has actually stated, "I began my Sister Wives Closet more than 10 years ago selling jewelry and other items. Carts not disabled." That's aimed at sounding like the company is ongoing, but honestly, that boat sailed years ago. Her attitude doesn't just appear unmotivated. It seems like she simply isn't interested in growth, connection, or even accountability. What actually characterizes Robyn's presence is her passivity, how she defers, sidesteps, and hardly ever adds anything worthwhile. It's isolated not just the audience, but her own family as well. Now, let's focus the lens a bit to Meri and Janelle. That's where things get still more complex. The actual tale of Cody's second wife, Janelle, isn't quite so neat as it's usually made out to be. During the time Cody was going out with Meri, Meri actually wanted to set him up with Janelle. But this wasn't some run-of-the-mill setup. It was complicated right off. You see, Janelle had been married before, to Meri's brother. That marriage only lasted about 11 months. Then, not long after, Janelle married Cody, Meri's husband. That kind of twist is bound to stir emotions, and it did. Imagine this. The wedding between Cody and Janelle was originally planned for Meri's birthday. That's not just awkward. It's the kind of detail that feels almost purposely hurtful, whether it was meant that way or not. Usually, they speak about Janelle as if she were just caught in the middle of everything, as if this just occurred around her. But let's be real. The facts are a little more complex than that. Janelle did not just stumble into this marriage. She chose to do it, knowing full well that Meri wasn't so much welcoming her with open arms. Cody himself summed it up this way. 20 years ago, I married Meri. 17 years ago, I married Janelle. That choice, whether due to faith, family planning, or something else altogether, established the tone for decades of tension and silence. Because the reality is, plural marriages aren't about multiple personalities rubbing against each other. They tend to start with emotional landmines already laid. Now, in the communities where Sister Wives is set, tangled family trees aren't uncommon. You've got overlapping relationships, higher rates of intermarriage, and a lot of complex ties. So in that environment, a situation like Janelle marrying her former brother-in-law isn't entirely out of the ordinary. But that doesn't make it easy or emotionally smooth. If we take a look at the drama between Meri and Janelle, it's not that one was cruel and the other the victim all the time. It was two very different women, with two very distinct personalities, attempting to live one life. Meri is direct and expressive. She tells it like she sees it. Janelle is a little quieter, more strategic in her approach. That's not a flaw, just a difference. Somebody even said one time that maybe it was time for an intervention, just to sit down and say, look, let's get this right. Let's correct this. But their tension wasn't just about disagreements or clashing styles. It was built into the very foundation of their family from day one. Let's clear up one of the more persistent misunderstandings once and for all. Janelle did not choose Meri's birthday to marry Cody. That rumor just doesn't line up with how things actually work. In their faith community, the Apostolic United Brethren, AUB, spiritual marriages are arranged by leadership, not the couple. There's only one specific day each month when these weddings are allowed to happen. No, Janelle didn't come marching in and go, let's pin this in on Meri's birthday so we can get things off to a real drama. That is not how it works. Now, yes, as it turned out, that month's designated marriage day did fall on Meri's birthday. Was it unfortunate timing? Definitely. But it wasn't some kind of calculated move against her. In fact, Janelle and Cody were even given permission to shift their ceremony to a different day within that same month, a detail that often gets conveniently ignored. So this is what actually went down that week. Dayton and Meri shared birthdays. Then Janelle and Cody marked their anniversary, and a few days later, Cody had a birthday as well. Busy time, for sure, but none of it was meant to be painful. And yet, people continue to spread the idea that Janelle deliberately picked Meri's birthday. Why? Because it's easier to paint her as the villain when the truth doesn't support that narrative. It takes the focus off what she actually went through, emotional mistreatment and being sidelined, and flips it around to make it seem like she brought it on herself. Now, is there a good question to pose here? Yes. Could Janelle and Cody have waited a month out of politeness? Perhaps. Should they have been more sensitive to how the timing would feel to Meri? Most definitely. But was it a personal attack? No. Cody himself said that what he did, courting Janelle without informing Meri, was wrong. So, although Janelle might not have intended to hurt anyone, her decisions weren't always the smartest ones. But that doesn't mean we have to distort the story into a soap opera of revenge. Now, changing topics a bit. Let's discuss Robyn and how she fit onto the show. At this point, it's difficult not to question why she's even on the show anymore. Her appearance is more like a coworker showing up to a job they secretly hate, performing the motions, getting paid, but hardly contributing. She's even declined to appear in footage from the show or respond to questions in interviews. That's not mysterious, that's being a professional. When you audition to appear on a reality show, there's a certain expectation that you'll, show up. Robyn behaves as though being totally present is some kind of unfair obligation. But here's the thing. If you're not willing to contribute meaningfully, there ought to be consequences. This isn't a hobby. It's a paid role. And being part of the show means engaging with the story, not sitting silently on the sidelines. At this point, it's worth asking, is Robyn even a full cast member anymore? Or has her role quietly slipped into the background? When Robyn does talk on the show, it's usually in circles, providing vague answers, saying "I don't know" repeatedly, and overall avoiding anything too concrete. Her voice seems more like an echo than a presence, and audiences are taking notice. The children mention Robyn to Cody, or others do, and it's like he clams up. He won't even discuss it. Robyn, in his mind, is off limits. She's his sacred cow, immaculate, beyond criticism. It's almost as if Robyn sees herself that same way too, put on a pedestal, above criticism. And Cody just enables it, always fawning all over her, holding on to this idealized vision of her that doesn't exactly reflect what audiences are watching on TV. That kind of fantasy can only be maintained for so long before things catch up to reality. Take her defensiveness, for example. "I've been following the rules very, very closely," she insists. "Why would anyone think I'm behind this?" But that kind of statement reveals more than it hides. What we're seeing now, the avoidance, the stonewalling, the overly polished image, probably mirrors what others in the family were dealing with behind the scenes for years. It's not speculation anymore. The patterns of manipulation are happening right before our eyes, and they're not pretty. When someone contributes little to a group and sidesteps the actual conversations, you can't help but ask yourself, what value are they really bringing to the table? And here's where the irony comes fully into play. The show, the one she appears to be more resistant to fully participate in, is probably a significant source of income for their way of life. So when she plays aloof or indifferent, we don't quite feel the sympathy. It's more of a message. I'm above the drama. I won't judge others. I'll just remain quiet, remain sweet, and let the world happen around me. But silence, when you're supposed to be speaking up, doesn't seem like grace. It seems like evading. And when someone won't even watch or acknowledge video that puts them directly at the center of things, it begins to seem less about privacy and more about avoiding accountability. There's a point where you must wonder, if you're not truly a part of the narrative anymore, why do you still occupy the stage? Now let's discuss Cody, and a lesser detail that says a great deal. Have you noticed that he insists on addressing them as the Cody Brown family? Not the Brown family, the Cody Brown family. It is a subtle thing, but it is significant. Why include the first name? Some would attribute it to distinguishing from other Browns. That's fair enough. It is a popular last name, and with many relatives in tow, clarity may be an issue. But in some religious groups, particularly some fundamentalist Mormon sects, it's also not unusual for the family to share the man's entire name. It's a means of creating identity, of course, but also a silent power play, a means of keeping the spotlight solidly on him. In this instance, it is more deliberate. Even when a document had all the members' signatures clearly stating who's included, Cody's name needed to take center stage, not for clarity, but for dominance. There is also an economic consideration. Indexing everything back to Cody's full name might make it more difficult for anyone else, siblings, cousins, extended family, to have any say or claim regarding the family business. The message is obvious. This is mine. Even within the family, that branding means something. One family member even made headlines by pushing against the official narrative, presenting a competing account of what happened that many people found much more plausible. We wonder, often, what actually transpired prior to the fame, the authentic story behind the trimmed one. But when somebody owns the name, they often own the story as well. And that leads us to ask a question more and more viewers are beginning to wonder. What if Robyn is not the victim of this drama, but the villain? Over the years since the children grew up, something has been apparent. Although all that Robyn has ever had to say about her ex-husband, that he was an awful man, a terrible father, has been bad. That he somehow involved her entire family in some sort of conspiracy, he's never answered. Ever. No interviews, no comebacks, only silence. And in the world today, where individuals are so quick to set the record straight, such silence is a luxury. Indeed, it's almost like a superpower. Why has he not defended himself? Over a decade of public criticism, you'd think he'd speak up, but maybe that silence says more than words ever could. Robyn will always say he relinquished his parental rights so Cody could adopt the children, as if he just didn't care. But from the outside, it might also easily appear that he cared, and made a choice based on what would be best for the children. Not everybody wants their family life broadcast on reality television. Some people still do believe in keeping things private, dignified, shielded. And one can't shake the quiet concern that some supporters have speculated about for years. What if, in the end, he did have the kids' best interests at heart? Perhaps his silence has been his method of protecting them from public turmoil, from strife, and from a narrative that wasn't his to share. Because it's one thing to talk about caring about the kids. It's another thing to show it by being quiet, particularly when your personal life is being aired without your permission. There's also the issue of alienation. Robyn's been charged with pushing her children away from the father, just as she's pushed them away from other members of the extended family. At times, keeping your mouth shut is all you've got when you're dealing with a person who survives on control and conflict. To some, destroying things is a form of sport. Those people never get any tired of causing trouble. And if there ever was a time when Robyn's former husband pushed her too far, that could have been all it took for her to turn her full wrath in his direction. Given the way that she has kept her children away from the other wives and their families, it isn't too difficult to imagine that she did the same to their biological father. Even at one point, Cody told us that their attorney had been attempting to serve Robyn's ex for 4 or 5 weeks. But sometimes, when the cards are completely against you and the tale is already set, you just let it go. Speaking out is useless, or even risky, when you know that you won't be listened to honestly. There's also a cultural component to this. Silence is not only encouraged in many polygamous groups, it's life itself. Discretion is woven into their fabric. For many, being quiet is second nature. What's especially telling is that not just Robyn's ex, but her entire former circle, extended family, old friends, even community members, have chosen the same quiet path. With all the public curiosity surrounding the show, you'd expect someone to speak up. And yet, there is still silence. Ironically, the man who's never uttered a word comes across better than those who can't stop talking. It's not so much what he's done, it's what he hasn't done. Now, of course, there could have been financial benefits or legal motives at play. When Robyn and Cody proceeded with the adoption, perhaps the biological deal was this: shut up and child support responsibilities disappear. It would not be the first time words cost money. Whatever the motive, one thing is certain: sometimes silence speaks volumes. And then there is the scene with Cody and Christine that viewers won't ever forget. Cody didn't shatter Christine's heart by cheating on her. He shattered it by laughing. In Season 8, Episode 2, there is a scene where the two of them have a conversation that is the turning point. It's not what he does, it's how little he cares. There's a moment from Season 8 that still resonates with a lot of viewers, and it's not about cheating or betrayal in the traditional sense. It's about something far more painful: being laughed at when your heart is hurting. It began because Ken, Cody's longtime friend, made a comment. While talking to Cody one day, he informed him that he needed to leave behind 3 of his wives and return to the Mormon church so that he could be saved. Now, to most individuals, particularly in a plural family, that's not only wrong, it's highly disrespectful. Christine didn't consider it a joke. And not really. How could she? But Cody waved it off, insisting it was a misunderstanding or a joke, something not to be taken literally. He even minimized Ken's statement as belonging to someone who just doesn't get their polygamous way of life. The other wives didn't appear to mind much, but Christine was offended, and understandably so. She had asked Cody not to invite Ken on their family vacation. She made her discomfort clear, but Cody invited him anyway. To Christine, it felt like a betrayal. not just of her feelings, but of their marriage. Rather than defending her or hearing her out sympathetically, Cody ridiculed her response. He complained about not enjoying her foot stamping and hair tossing, and referred to it as princess behavior. He portrayed her as childish, such as a girl who refused to share. He even protested that if he stopped hanging out with all those people who didn't approve of polygamy, he'd have no friends at all. But Christine was angry because of a philosophical difference. This was not about beliefs. Ken had essentially told Cody to leave her. That's not about beliefs. That's about being discarded. But Cody didn't take her side. He didn't support her. He didn't acknowledge her hurt. Instead, he belittled her for holding on to her ego and accused her of spoiling the whole trip, despite the fact that the encounter with Ken never even took place. In a quiet pause in a confession, Christine uttered something devastating. "I don't know how to return to a good vacation anymore. I take it personally that I destroyed the vacation. I essentially feel like I destroyed our entire vacation." Her voice wasn't aggressive. It was weary, defeated. You could see how badly hurt she was. It wasn't about this one incident alone. It was all the stuff leading up to it. That was followed by something much deeper being revealed. Christine's emotional needs weren't misunderstood. They were utterly ignored. Rather than supporting her, Cody downplayed her feelings and taunted her on camera. And it only got worse in the next episode. Instead of thinking about what had occurred, Cody doubled down. He began portraying Christine as the culprit. He insinuated emotional or hormonal problems, terminology that's not only condescending, but perilously antiquated. It was a stereotype aimed at discrediting her rather than working through what she was actually experiencing. Here's the irony. Ken later called to apologize. He saw how his words hurt. That phone call took more emotional maturity and respect for Christine's emotions than Cody did for the whole ordeal. It wasn't a simple argument between husband and wife. It was a trend. Cody cared more about how other guys perceived him than about how his own wife perceived things. He shied away from arguing with male friends, even when they insulted his family, but wasn't shy about criticizing the women closest to him. Christine wasn't requesting a lot, merely recognition, a bit of understanding, a little emotional shielding. What she received instead was mocking, accusation, and loneliness. The incident didn't cause the breach between them, but it did illustrate it. It highlighted just how shallow their bond had grown. Christine had been attempting to keep everything under her own control for entirely too long.